Try the latest CIP Level 2 NACE CIP2-001 dumps from Passcert to best prepare for your NACE Coating Inspector Level 2 exam. You can practice real NACE CIP2-001 questions and answers multiple times so that you can pass your NACE CIP Level 2 exam successfully in your first try. You also need to pass CIP Level 1 NACE CIP2-001 exam to become a coating inspector. Question 1. You are the NACE coating inspector on a tank lining project and are asked to perform a high-voltage holiday test after the coating applicators have completed their final repairs. After meeting all the confined space entry permit, you enter the tank and notice a very strong odor of solvent. Your first course of action should to A. Investigate to find the source of the odor. B. Don your air-supplied respirator and continue the testing. C. Exit the tank and immediately and report the problem to the nearest safety supervisor. D. Exit the tank and document the incident in your daily report. Answer. C. Question 2. You are working as the only in-house NACE Level 2 inspector in a shop setting when an independent third-party NACE Level 3 inspector, representing the owner, presents you with a copy of a non-conformance report, NCR, he has written for NACE2 SSPCSP10 centrifugal blast which you had previously approved. Your first preferred course of action is to A. Verbally challenge the NCR. B. Request a re-blast of the item in question. C. Consult your supervisor. D. Review the NCR with the other inspector. Answer. C. Question 3. The cost of qualified coating inspection is normally offset by A. Lower application costs. B. Lower coating lifecycle costs. C. Lower safety enforcement costs. D. Lower supervision costs. Answer. B. Question 4. You are a NACE Level 2 coating inspector who has just arrived on a job in progress where there is no inspection and test plan, ITP. The first morning you arrive, the job is behind schedule and you are asked to take DIY film thickness readings. Your first preferred course of action is to A. Refuse to take readings until an is in place. B. Develop your own methodology and proceed take the readings. C. Use a generally accepted industry standard and to take readings. D. Call your supervisor. Answer. C. Question 5. You are the NACE Level 2 coating inspector where SSPCPA2 has been specified with an additional requirement that no individual gauge reading shall be below a certain value. As this is not part of the standard, you should A. Ignore the additional requirement. B. Enforce the additional requirement. C. Call your supervisor. D. Request clarification from the specifier. Answer. B. Question 6. When using a destructive paint inspection gauge, the NACE inspector must A. Determine the dry film thickness of the coating prior to use. B. Ensure the glue on the dolly is properly applied prior to use. C. Consult SSPC Guide 1 prior to use. D. Select the appropriate handwheel based on the measured dry film thickness prior to use. Answer: A. Question 7. As a NACE Level 2 inspector on a field job, prior to submission your documentation should always reviewed and approved by A. A NACE Protective Coating Specialist, B. A NACE Level 1 inspector, C. Another NACE Level 2 inspector, D. A NACE Level 3 inspector. Answer: D. Question 8. You are the NACE Level 2 inspector reviewing the documentation from a NACE Level 1. You notice significant documentation errors. Your first preferred course of action is to A. Correct the errors yourself and suggest the Level 1 inspector be replaced. B. Correct the errors yourself and advise your supervisor that the Level 1 inspector is incompetent. C. Have the Level 1 inspector correct the errors and set up remedial training to improve the quality of documentation. D. Correct the errors yourself and submit the reports without any further action. Answer: C. Question 9. NACE Level 2 inspectors have been authorized to perform A. All types of inspection without supervision, B. Visual inspection and non-destructive testing, C. Visual inspection, non-destructive and destructive testing, D. Visual inspection only. Answer: C. Question 10. You have just your NACE CIP Level 2 certification when you are asked to supervise a team of uncertified field pipeline inspectors. Your first preferred course of action is to A. Accept assignment without hesitation, B. Advise the prospective employer that you cannot accept the position, C. Meet with the prospective employer to scope of your role, D. Review the NACE attestation prior to making a decision. Answer: D.